She said I was her miracle, until the day she buried me in court. I met her on the balcony of a hotel in Capri, overlooking the Tyrrhenian Sea. She was wearing a silk scarf tied around her hair, sunglasses too big for her face, and sipping something golden from a glass that caught the sunlight like a prism. I was there on business. She was there, she claimed, for the view. I was 41. CEO of a tech firm that had just IPO'd. My name was still echoing in Forbes and Business Insider, but I wasn't flashy. I wore tailored suits, drove a quiet Bentley, and spent my money like it could disappear any second, because once, in another life, I was dirt poor. When she looked at me, I felt like a man in a novel. She called me mysterious. Said I had the kind of stillness that made people nervous. I told her she made me nervous. She laughed, and the sound felt like champagne, light, dangerous, addictive. Her name was Elena. She was 29, said she worked in luxury event planning. Said she didn't believe in accidents, only timing. That line should have been my first red flag. We had dinner that night. By dessert, I knew I would marry her. By morning, she was in my bed, curled against me like she belonged there. 8 months later, she did. No prenup. I told myself it was romantic. That love wasn't a transaction. That she wasn't like the others. The wedding was small but lavish, my idea. Just family and a few friends on a cliffside terrace in Ravello. She wore ivory silk and a look in her eyes I now realize I misunderstood. It wasn't love. It was triumph. The first year was heaven. She made me feel like the center of her universe. Candlelit dinners. Surprise visits to my office. Whispered plans for a future filled with children, villas, dogs. She called me her anchor. Her miracle. Said I saved her. I didn't know I was being slowly erased from my own story. It started with a lost bracelet. Something small, gold, and expensive that had been a gift from me. She said she must have dropped it in the garden. I searched the grounds myself. Never found it. She cried when I replaced it. Said I was too good to her. Said she didn't deserve me. I believed her. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was when I let her talk me into adding her name to the villa. We're married, she said. What's mine is yours, and yours is mine. She said it with a playful smile, legs curled under her on the balcony as she sipped red wine, the Amalfi Coast stretching behind her. I signed the papers that week. I was in love. And when you're in love, you don't think of worst-case scenarios. You think about breakfast in bed and your future kids' names. Over the next year, she changed subtly. She started working with clients I never met. Flew to Paris, Monaco, Dubai. Said she was helping with high-end weddings and yacht parties. I didn't question it. I respected her independence. Encouraged it, even. But she grew distant. The softness in her voice became more clipped. She stopped laughing as much. Stopped touching me without reason. I came home from a trip once, Shanghai, board meetings, and found her crying in the kitchen. I dropped everything. Wrapped my arms around her. Asked what was wrong. She said she'd had a nightmare. That I'd left her. That she couldn't breathe without me. 2 days later, I found a receipt for a $14,000 handbag I hadn't bought. It wasn't the price that got me. It was the location, Geneva. She said she was in Madrid that weekend. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. That I'd misunderstood. That maybe it was a gift for someone else. Mistake number 3. One night, about a year and a half into our marriage, I woke up alone. Her side of the bed was cold. I found her downstairs at 3:12 a.m. Sitting in the dark, scrolling through something on her phone. When she saw me, she jumped. Couldn't sleep, she said. I nodded. Said nothing. Her phone screen had gone black. We sat there in silence for a long time. She didn't reach for me. Didn't ask me to come closer. Just stared ahead like she was somewhere else entirely. When she finally came back to bed, she turned away from me. That night, for the first time, I dreamed I was drowning. Some nights, I'd wake up and wonder if I'd married a stranger in disguise. The day I first truly doubted Elena was our 3rd anniversary. I'd planned a weekend at a private vineyard in Tuscany, just us, no staff, no distractions. I hired a chef to cook a 5-course meal, and arranged for a string quartet to play the song we danced to at our wedding. The whole thing felt like a scene from a movie. One of those moments you imagine being remembered for the rest of your lives. She was late. She arrived in a rented black Mercedes an hour past sunset, hair perfectly done, makeup untouched by time. But her eyes looked distant, her smile brittle. I kissed her cheek. She turned away slightly. Sorry, she said, brushing past me. There was traffic. From where? I asked without thinking. She hesitated for half a beat too long. Milan. Meetings. She'd told me she was flying from Florence that morning. I didn't press it. The dinner went on like an echo of what we used to be. Her laughter was too sharp. Her compliments too automatic. When I gave her the necklace, emerald, hand-set, antique French design, she smiled, touched her throat, and said it was lovely. Not beautiful. Not thoughtful. Just lovely. I told myself she was tired. That maybe the trip had just worn her down. That night, she fell asleep without kissing me. And I lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling beams, listening to the quiet hum of Tuscany around us, and the louder silence between us. The next morning, I found her phone buzzing in the kitchen. A name flashed across the screen I didn't recognize. J. Bell. It stopped ringing the moment I touched it. Locked. Nothing unusual about that. But my name, my number, was saved in her phone as Michael W. Not Michael Redheart like it used to be. Not even husband. Just Michael W. I put the phone down. She walked in seconds later, barefoot, sleepy-eyed, and in my white dress shirt. You okay? She asked. I smiled. Yeah. You. Hum. She padded to the coffee machine, oblivious. Or pretending. That's when I started watching. Not obsessively. Just closely. I began noticing how she guarded her laptop like it held state secrets. How she stepped outside for phone calls more often. How she always seemed to have a new password, a new excuse. One evening, we hosted a gala at the Vienna embassy. She wore black velvet, red lips, and the Cartier earrings I bought her in Prague. Every man in the room looked at her. But I looked at her phone screen when she wasn't watching, and caught a message flash from someone saved as Amelia. It read, "The wire came through. Same split." I stared at it for 2 seconds too long. Just enough for her to catch me. Looking for something, she asked coolly, stepping closer. Just checking the time. She held my gaze for a moment, then smiled. Let's go greet the ambassador. She tucked the phone away. The message disappeared into the night like it never happened. That was when I started keeping track. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Something in me still hoped I was wrong. Instead, I quietly hired someone. A man named Rinaldi. Ex-intelligence, now working private. Discreet. Expensive. Worth every euro. I gave him one instruction: find out who she really is. A week passed. Then 2. Then 3. Each day, she smiled. Kissed me good morning. Held my hand in public. Made love like nothing was wrong. Each night, I stared at the ceiling, wondering who she became once I fell asleep. Rinaldi called on a Tuesday morning. "Meet me in Zurich," he said. "Bring no one." I boarded the jet that afternoon. She thought I was in Brussels. In Zurich, Rinaldi slid a folder across the cafe table. Black and white photographs. Bank printouts. Screenshots of messages from encrypted platforms. A name I'd never heard, Julien Leclerc. A face I'd never seen. French passport. Swiss bank account. Trips she took alone that were never alone. Money I didn't know I'd lost. Documents she'd signed under both our names. Fake companies. Shell accounts. Real transfers. She'd been draining me slowly. Methodically. And I never saw it coming. I stared at her face in one of the photos, laughing on a boat with Julien. Same laugh she gave me on our wedding day. Same sunglasses. Different man. Rinaldi waited. "You sure about all this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "She started 6 months after the wedding," he said. "And she's very, very good." I nodded. My hands trembled. But not with rage. With realization. I'd built an empire. And I'd handed it to a woman who was quietly turning it to ash. I didn't confront her that night. I watched her instead. And for the first time, I saw the stranger she truly was. When I returned from Zurich, Elena greeted me at the door like always. In her silk robe, barefoot, glass of wine in hand, music low in the background. She kissed me softly, her perfume brushing against my face like a weapon dressed as comfort. "Long flight?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, stepping past her. "You wouldn't believe the delays." She nodded, poured another glass, handed it to me. "Sit. Let me rub your shoulders." I let her. And for those first few minutes, I wondered if I could live a lie. Pretend I hadn't seen her on that yacht. That I didn't know about the Swiss accounts, the forged documents. That I wasn't aware she was quietly selling off shares of my company through proxies. But then I saw it. The bracelet. The one she had lost more than a year ago, the first breadcrumb in a trail I didn't know I was following. There it was, on her wrist, shining in the low light. "Is that the bracelet you lost?" I asked. She looked down, startled. A fraction of a second too long before she smiled. "Oh, no, this is a replica. I had one made. Couldn't bear not having it. A replica." I said nothing. That night, I stood by the bedroom window while she slept. Or pretended to. I watched the ocean rise and fall under the moonlight and imagined the waves slowly swallowing everything we owned. The next morning, I called my lawyers. Quietly. From a burner phone. I didn't tell them about the affair. Or the fraud. Not yet. I asked hypothetical questions. About asset protection. About trusts. About what might happen in the event of a discreet dissolution. One of them, an old shark named De Silva, paused on the line. "Are we talking about Elena? Let's keep it general for now." He laughed softly. "Then generally, you're screwed." Over the next few weeks, I played the part. Dutiful husband. Attentive partner. She never suspected a thing. If anything, she grew warmer. Almost smug. She booked a trip for us to Santorini. Said we needed a reset. A new chapter. I agreed. But before we left, I had her tailed again. She met with a notary. Handed over a folder. Laughed with someone I didn't recognize, later identified as an offshore advisor. She was finalizing her exit. And mine. In Santorini, she stood on the white stone balcony, arms outstretched, pretending to be free. "You know," she said, if I died tomorrow, I'd die happy. Why's that? She smiled at me, hair tangled by the sea breeze. Because I have everything I ever wanted. Everything. Not everyone. I slept little that night. Her hand rested on my chest as if she were claiming land. 2 days later, while she was out getting a massage, I broke into her laptop. She'd gotten sloppy. Arrogant. Maybe she thought I'd never dare. Inside was everything Rinaldi had already shown me, plus more. A plan. Step-by-step documentation of the transfer of all our major holdings. Real estate. Equity. Even copyrights and patent positions tied to my innovations. Every signature looked authentic. Because they were. I'd signed them. Unknowingly. In blind trust. In love. There was also a folder labeled simply, After. Inside, bookings for new housing in the Caymans. A private jet itinerary. 2 names listed for pickup, Elena Williams and Julian Leclerc. Departure, 1 week from now. She was going to disappear. With him. With everything. And I was going to wake up alone, broke, publicly humiliated, legally devastated. Unless I did something first. I copied everything. Every document. Every booking. Every thread. That night at dinner, I watched her cut into grilled sea bass while talking about us moving to Lisbon next spring. I asked her if she was happy. Of course I am, she said, without looking up. Why wouldn't I be? I smiled. And for the first time in months, I felt steady. I had 7 days. And she had no idea who she was really married to. The moment I stopped loving her was the moment I realized I still wanted to win. The flight home from Santorini felt like the quiet before a hurricane. Elena slept the whole way, head resting against the window, sunglasses on despite the dim cabin lighting. I watched the clouds drift beneath us and made a mental list of what needed to happen before she vanished. First, freeze the bleeding. Before we even landed, I called Da Silva on the encrypted app. We go silent. No noise, no filings. I want you to move everything offshore by Thursday. Use the Albanian route you mentioned. Don't leave a footprint. Understood, he said. You cutting her off? Not yet. I want her to think I'm still blind. I needed her playing her role until the very last act. At home, I pretended to be distracted with work. Cancelled meetings. Claimed jet lag. Meanwhile, my team, those who still answered to me and not her proxies, began to quietly unwind whatever they could. Trusts were closed. Shells were cracked open. My name, my legacy, was being untangled from hers, thread by thread. But one problem remained: she had control of the holding company. That was my mistake. Months ago, I'd signed over voting rights, temporarily, I thought. She claimed it would help her move faster with partner negotiations. Said I was too slow. Too cautious. And I'd believed her. Now, she held the majority. If I tried to take it back directly, it would trigger alarms. I'd be cut out completely within days. So I set a trap. I arranged a meeting in Dubai. A new potential buyer. Middle Eastern royalty, well-known, high-profile, documented interest in our tech. The kind of bait she couldn't resist. I told her about it over wine that Tuesday evening, casual, distracted. You should take this one, I said. They'll listen better to you. She raised an eyebrow. Really? You sure? Yeah, I said. You've got the charm. She smiled. All right. I'll book it tonight. Hook, line, sinker. While she packed, I flew to Geneva. Rinaldi was waiting. He had what I needed, proof that Julian Leclerc wasn't just her lover. He was a known financial predator. A man flagged in 4 jurisdictions for manipulating heiresses and widows. Nothing had stuck legally, but his digital trail was messy enough. Together, they'd set up offshore trusts under false pretenses. Falsified filings. Identity fraud. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was federal crime. Back in the States, I compiled the dossier. Then added one final piece, a video. From Santorini. I had the villa wired, security footage, voice recordings. In one clip, Elena was speaking on the phone, pacing the balcony barefoot. "He still suspects nothing," she said, laughing. "By the time he notices, we'll be sipping champagne in St. Barth." I saved it to a USB. Placed it in a black envelope. Labeled it simply, "For Julian, in case she turns on you first." I didn't mail it. I hand-delivered it to their lawyer in Zurich. Anonymous drop. Let them start doubting each other. Let the cracks form from within. 2 days later, Elena left for Dubai. Her final play. And mine. While she was airborne, De Silva executed the transfer protocols. A silent cascade of reversals. Every share she held was rendered void, tainted by fraud. My name returned to the throne. I walked into my office that afternoon and sat at my desk for the first time in months. The staff stared like they'd seen a ghost. Because in a way, they had. The man who had once built an empire from nothing had returned. And this time, he was no longer in love. She walked into my office 3 days later like she still owned the world. She didn't know I'd already changed the locks. Elena's heels clicked sharply against the marble floors as she entered HQ. She wore white, always white when she wanted to project power. Hair sleek, sunglasses still on, even though we were indoors. Behind her followed 2 assistants and a man I recognized as Julian's attorney. She didn't even glance at the receptionist. "Tell Michael I'm here," she said. The receptionist, bless her, didn't flinch. "I believe he's expecting you. Conference room B." Not my office. Conference room B had mirrored glass walls. I wanted her to feel surrounded. She walked in and stopped. I was already seated. Alone. No lawyers. No papers. Just a single envelope on the table. She smiled, slow and amused. "You look tired, darling. You look late." She raised an eyebrow. Sat down across from me. Crossed one leg over the other like she was settling in for a manicure. "So, what's this about?" "I have another meeting at 11. I pushed the envelope toward her. She opened it. Slid out the photos. The emails. The notarized transfers. The Santorini audio transcript. For the first time in our entire marriage, she didn't speak. She just stared. I let the silence stretch. Then, "You've been busy," she murmured. "You've been sloppy," I replied. A flicker of something in her eyes, panic. No. Something colder. Calculation. "So, what now? You going to cry? Kick me out? Drag my name through the mud?" "No," I said. "That's your playbook." She sat back. "Then what do you want, Michael?" I stood. Walked to the window. Looked down at the city I once built from nothing. When I turned back, she was watching me like a predator. "I want this to end quietly," I said. "You walk away. No claims. No statements. No settlements." She laughed, dry, humorless. "You think I'll just walk away from all of this?" "No," I said. "I think Julian will." I dropped a second envelope on the table. Labeled, "For Julian." She stared at it. "What's that?" "Insurance. The kind that makes men like him disappear." Her smile faded. "You wouldn't." "I already did." She stood suddenly, knocking her chair back. The attorney stepped forward, but she held up a hand. Her voice was low. "You're bluffing. You're welcome to call him and find out." She didn't move. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. "Leave," I said. "And if I don't? Then I file everything. You go down for fraud, conspiracy, and asset theft. He goes down for financial crimes in 3 countries. And you both become a cautionary tale." She opened her mouth, then stopped. She knew. She was smart enough to know when she'd lost. I watched her gather the papers. Her hands didn't shake. Not even a little. That, somehow, made it worse. At the door, she turned. "You're still in love with me, you know." "No," I said. "I'm just finally in love with myself again." She left without another word. And just like that, the chapter closed. But the story wasn't over. Because I'd won the battle. But the war inside me was only beginning. The house felt too quiet without her lies echoing through it. In the days that followed her exit, I didn't celebrate. There were no drinks poured. No revenge speeches in the mirror. Just silence. You'd think reclaiming everything would feel like winning. It didn't. It felt like walking through the ruins of a palace I once built with bare hands, only to find it hollowed out from the inside. I kept the villa. Not out of nostalgia. Out of spite. I let it sit untouched, sunlight spilling across cold marble floors. No one walked anymore. Her perfume still haunted the guest linens. Her laugh still clung to the corners of the kitchen. Like a ghost with perfect hair and sharpened teeth. People reached out. Friends, former colleagues, even tabloids. I ignored them all. Because how do you explain to someone that you didn't lose your marriage overnight? That it happened slowly. One smile at a time. One missed call at a time. One forged document at a time. Rinaldi called. She's in Monaco. With him. For now. Let them rot, I said, and meant it. But at night, I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, remembering the first time I told her I loved her. Her eyes wide, disbelieving. Her voice small, "You mean that?" I had meant it. That version of her, young, laughing, full of pretend wonder, was dead now. Or maybe she never existed. I started running again. Not for health. For control. 5 miles every morning before the sun. No music. Just the sound of my breath and footsteps. Each day, I cleared something old out of the house. A photo. A wine glass. A dress she'd forgotten, or left behind on purpose. But not everything. One drawer remained. The top left in her writing desk. I hadn't opened it. Not since she left. It wasn't locked. It should have been. Inside, a Polaroid of us from Capri. Her handwriting on the back, "He doesn't see the knife I'm holding." I stared at it for a long time. Was it a joke? A sick prophecy? A confession? I don't know. I burned it in the fireplace. A week later, I received a letter. Not from her, from her lawyer. It was short. Cold. Predictable. She was filing for divorce. On her terms. No mention of settlement. No mention of prior threats or accusations. Just a clean request for dissolution. Almost polite. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. De Silva filed my own paperwork the next day. With attachments. Photos. Evidence. And a clause. All assets remain with the respondent. No financial claim permitted due to ongoing criminal investigations. We never saw each other in court. Her lawyer folded within days. Quietly. Professionally. Like someone being paid not to ask questions. By the end of the month, I was legally free. But freedom didn't feel like I thought it would. It felt like standing in the middle of the ocean after a storm, surrounded by nothing but debris and silence. I didn't hear from her again. But I started seeing her everywhere. At the airport, in a face half hidden behind sunglasses. In a laugh that sounded too much like hers on a restaurant terrace. In a silk scarf someone wore on a train platform, tied exactly the way she used to. My mind was a haunted house and she was the wallpaper. I tried to date. Once. A woman named Claire. Sweet, honest, a schoolteacher. We had dinner in a quiet place near the coast. She told me about her students, her love for poetry. She asked if I'd ever been in love. I said yes. She asked how it ended. Badly, I said. She didn't ask again. We didn't see each other again either. I started writing. Not a book, not even a journal. Just lines. Fragments. Thoughts I couldn't say aloud. I wrote them on scraps of paper and burned them in the fireplace. I think part of me was still trying to let her go. One morning, 6 months after the divorce finalized, I found a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, a photo album. Our wedding. Every photo was intact, except my face was blacked out in every one. A note was tucked inside the back cover, "You were never really there anyway." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Was it from her? A final jab? A reminder that even my memories weren't safe? I put the album on the lowest shelf of the bookcase, behind books I'd never read. I didn't throw it out. I don't know why. Some scars want to be seen. Later that week, De Silva called. She's fled Monaco. Investigators are circling. Julian's name came up in a laundering probe. And her? Gone. No trace. I stood at the window and watched the sky change. A storm was building. Or maybe passing. Let them chase ghosts, I said. He was quiet. Then, do you want me to keep tracking her? I thought about it. No, I said. Let her vanish. He hesitated. And if she resurfaces? She won't. Not as who she was. And neither would I. That night, I walked down to the ocean for the first time in months. The tide was low, the wind soft. I stood there until my feet went numb. Then I stepped into the surf. Just ankle deep. Just enough to feel something. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't see her. People think betrayal ends with anger. But it doesn't. It ends in silence. It's been a year. I still live in the same house. Still walk past the same rooms. But they echo differently now. Less like wounds, more like rooms that once had meaning and now just don't. The staff came back, little by little. I kept it quiet. No parties, no business launches, no media interviews. Just life. Clean, deliberate, stripped down. I've built new walls, real and emotional. Some mornings, I wake up before sunrise, drink black coffee, and watch the light crawl across the tile floor like it's learning the house again. There's peace in stillness. But it's not the same as peace. I never heard from Elena again. Not a letter. Not a message. Nothing. Sometimes I wonder if she really existed. If she was ever the woman I thought I loved, or just a character written so convincingly that I fell into the story. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if that version of me still exists too, the man who trusted blindly, who thought love made him invincible. He died quietly. Somewhere between Zurich and the moment she smiled across that conference room table, pretending I hadn't just handed her a mirror. I buried him without a eulogy. But I didn't leave the grave empty. In his place, I planted something else. Not revenge. Not cynicism. Clarity. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that walks beside you in silence, reminding you that surviving isn't about winning. It's about seeing. Seeing the cracks before they split you open. Seeing yourself not as the broken man, but the one who learned to bleed with purpose. I've started writing again. Really writing. Not just burning scraps. I call it fiction. But every word is a fingerprint. And maybe one day, someone will read it and see themselves in it. The pain. The unraveling. The slow, brutal resurrection. Not as a warning. But as proof. That sometimes the story doesn't end when the villain leaves. Sometimes, the real ending begins when you finally stop looking back.